welcome to the Speaking Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, Daisy Farrell, and I am a psychic medium, healer, teacher, and artist based in the Hudson Valley, New York. And I am so glad that you are here with me today. I am really excited because I am continuing this mini series that I had started. I think this is the third episode now. Yep. And I have a wonderful guest. I'm very excited. And we're actually here in person together, which is so fun. And I will just, for those of you that have not seen the other episodes, you can check them out. The last two were with Jacqueline Kaminsky and Arlene Maines. But basically, this series is all around loss, in particular, of a person, and how it serves as a catalyst for people's spiritual growth and path, particularly even discovering their own connection to the spirit world or spiritual work, because it's really a lot more common than I think we realize. And I think it's such an important topic to discuss as well. So I'm very excited to just continue this wonderful conversation around this topic. And let me introduce our fabulous guest today. Well, I have my amazing, wonderful, fabulous, fantastical friend, Laura Mazzotta, with me. And here's a little bio on her. Laura Mazzotta is a conscious mentor, Akashic Records channel, and holistic therapist of 20 years. She's deeply committed to actualizing full self-acceptance through intimacy with your soul. Laura will unlock years of sacred medicine for you in 20 to 30 minutes. Just when you thought you had it all figured out, she will take you a layer deeper. The best part is Laura teaches you how to do it all for yourself, so you feel empowered and confident. I love that. I think it's such a great embodiment of what you do. I mean, it's hard to encapsulate everything that you do, because Laura is pretty multifaceted, guys. She's absolutely amazing. She's one of my absolute favorite people. I love her so much. And she, oh my God, I mean, we have been friends for a very long time. We have been through so many different transitions just in our own lives together. So that's why I also just love that we're having this conversation together, because we've really seen so much change and growth within each other throughout our relationship. And yay, welcome, say hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This
Yay.
is so fun.
All right, yay. All right, so I think we can just dive right in here. So I know in particular we are going to be talking about the loss of your father.
Yes.
So really, when I start these episodes, I would just love for you to maybe start us off by discussing a little bit about the relationship you had with your father when he was alive, and kind of what that was like, how that transpired, and maybe going even into his passing and all of that. So just kind of taking us to the before, in a sense.
Sure. Yeah, so the relationship with my dad was complex. And it was complex because my parents got divorced when I was 7, and it was a tension-filled divorce, very conflict-ridden, and a lot of that was projected onto the kids, and inadvertently, it wasn't intentional. They were both in terrible spaces, and so my relationship with him always kind of felt like there was tension in between. And it was interesting because after he passed, I went to see a medium, and the first thing that the medium said as soon as my dad came forward was, he's so sorry because he inserted his frustration with your mother into the relationship with you, and he's very apologetic about that. And so there was definitely tension in that relationship, and he was kind of he was an introverted man.
Yeah.
He was an introverted man. And he had some spectrum-y stuff going on, I think, as well.
Sure.
And so there was only so much intimacy emotionally that I could access in that relationship with him. And so that would lead to some frustration. And I have to say that as soon as he got sick, I spent more intimate time with him than I ever really had, you know? And he was sick for, I guess, about 4.5 years before he died. And it just kind of progressed little by little. And I went down there for long periods of time and would help take care of him and support my family, my stepmom and my little sister who were down there as well. And then when we knew he had to go into hospice, I went down there and just stayed with him in inpatient hospice for a month before he passed. And that was a really big gift because we were able to really spend open, spacious time with him where we were putting together music that he enjoyed and just listening with him and, really connecting with a lot of friends and family members that were kind of coming in and out and just having really nourishing time in presence together. Yeah. And what was cool was that at the end, I guess even before he went into hospice, but mostly when he went into hospice, before he really wasn't that conscious, he really brought out a lot of his like little boy. And so we got to see glimpses of like the core essence of who he was, which was really cool because that was a part that I think had been guarded for much of his life.
Yeah.
And so we got to see some of these silly, playful, even feisty, a little snarky parts of him that would come forward. And it was kind of refreshing.
Right.
To be able to engage with him in a way that didn't have any conscious blocks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that point that you're bringing up, especially around, I mean, I can definitely relate to just the situation with hospice in the sense that, yeah, I mean, I also feel a lot of gratitude around being able to have experienced that. And it's so true, obviously, and that's the whole thing. And there's so many layers to all of this, but obviously it's not that we ever necessarily want to be in this position. However, it is such a unique, and there is a specialness to it of being within that space within someone, with someone that is transitioning. It's wild, the energy of it. I mean, for me personally, I know that was just a life-changing experience even for me.
It's an education in itself.
Right.
I mean, the amount that I learned, I mean, from the hospice nurses, but also just from, you know, my father's process and witnessing the transition and the kind of going in between dimensions.
Right.
In that space before passing. And it was really eye-opening and also really humbling and grounding because it's also this very reverent time.
Yeah.
Where it's being in reverence for your relationship and extending energy to that person to support their transition at the same time that you're honoring yourself.
Right.
And the grief that you're feeling and the connections and the things that you desire before this person passes. And so it's being able to find a real harmony with that that's deeply honoring of both people.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And I'm very curious. One of the things I'd love to ask you is, at that point in time, where were you within your own spiritual work and your own spiritual journey and kind of the level of awareness that you think you had compared to now?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's changed dramatically.
Right.
So, I mean, I've always been very spiritual.
Right.
I was planning on being a Presbyterian minister, going to the seminary. Mm-hmm. Life took a different turn. And then even before he died, when he got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, which was further along in his journey, my mom got diagnosed with cancer at the same time.
Wow.
It was within, I think it was within a week of each other.
Wow. And
so I was supporting her with her mastectomy, and I was supporting him, I mean, as best I could. He was states away, in his journey as well. And I think that my spirituality started to shift then. Right? Because there was a lot. There was a lot of energy coming up, and it was so clear to me that there was an invitation here for me, like a deeper invitation here. And so that started to kind of spark things. Mm-hmm. And then when he passed, it really opened things up because my relationship with him is so different in spirit than it was then. And it was almost like this gateway or this bridge to having more palpable spiritual connection.
Right.
Right. That I could feel more in my body and I could almost humanize a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right. And the communication was there that I was able to kind of bridge because I knew him in human form. Right.
Right.
And it was this closer relationship, as odd as it was. He's still my father. And so yeah, I think that really opened me up and just opened my awareness to seeing the bigger picture of life and where my soul was leading me versus where my human had been aligned.
Yeah, I love that. No, and I think that's such a valid point of just how when we are shown the process of life and death in a very upfront way, it has a lot of power and power to really almost, I mean, kind of force you to open your eyes to this bigger truth and kind of like, whoa, right. This isn't forever.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I think it's so true that I think, and let me know what you think of this, but I think it's so true, especially just in American society. We just kind of serialize the idea of death in a lot of ways, versus when I think of so many other cultures, right? It's kind of just, I don't know, brushed under the rug in a way, and it's just like, yeah, we're not really going to go there. And I think there's also such a fixation around escaping death, with even just beauty, avoiding aging, right? Just not honoring the overall process of aging, and even celebrating it. Celebrating that it's a beautiful thing and a gift that we get to live every year that we get older, that we get to age, that we get to even show that we've aged and lived a full life on our face and our body. I just think it's something that I think maybe happens a lot, and I'd be really interested to hear what our listeners think as well. But people that live in this country especially, right? When you're suddenly faced with something like that, I think it can almost be, in a way, a bigger shock because of this and because of the way our society raises us in that way.
Yeah, no, I would agree, because that's exactly what I was going to say, is it's really an invitation into transcendent beauty.
Yeah.
And a deep appreciation for the depth of someone. And I think that translates over to our human relationships, right? Where we get to see them for their soul and not for their human being, their behaviors, their emotions, the way they speak, the choices that they make. Like, who cares? Right? Who cares? It's that glimpse that I was saying of that inner essence of who he was. That was this beautiful awakening for me to, that's what's been inside all along.
Yeah.
And everybody's got that.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And that's the other thing. I mean, and that's also part of why I love that we're talking about this, because I think that's also part of why I want this message out there. That's the other thing, is to kind of remind people that, of course, there's always going to be certain limitations within relationships. Things happen, right? But ideally, I think it's good to have that reminder or that thought that maybe we don't have to wait till death to access this within each other, right? It doesn't have to be that makes that happen. Sadly, it is for a lot of people, right?
Yeah, and I had a lot of guilt about that. Everybody has guilt as part of the grief process, but I had guilt about that the concentrated, intimate time I had with him was the last couple of years of his life.
Right.
But that was also his choice
as
well, And so it's honoring his human decisions that his soul chose for this particular incarnation. And also just being in deep gratitude for the place that we were able to get to before he died.
Yeah, I love that.
And the place that we've been able to grow from since he died.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of where I want to take us next. So I would really love to know if you can kind of tell our listeners about how, from the time that he passed, how soon after that happened did you start to go into your work with the Akashic Records and kind of, your own work as a spiritual leader, practitioner, all the things that you do?
So I think it was more of a personal journey right away.
Right.
Right away, one of the things that my dad, he wasn't able to speak for a year and a half before he died because he had oral cancer. So they had removed most of his tongue and XYZ. So one of the things he had communicated to me in writing before he went into hospice was to focus on writing and my spirituality. Those are the two things he really felt he wanted to impart to me. And so that's really what I focused on. I started writing a lot, like channel writing from spirit, and just kind of being in a quiet space and intentionally connecting with the spirit world more than I had previously to that. And like I had said, I was originally planning on being a Presbyterian minister, so it was also this real leaving behind of traditional religious understanding or paradigms and shifting more into just my own personal relationship with spirit. And so that kind of developed over time. And then it was when I got sick. Then I got sepsis.
Yeah.
And prior to sepsis, though, I had my third child. And the reason I decided to have a third child was because my dad passed. I mean, it was out of that because I just wanted more family. You know, I wanted more family. I wanted more connection, more intimacy. And I was just like, we need more love in the world, you know, more connection in the world. And so I had my third child, and it was the sickest pregnancy I had. So that was another invitation from spirit, right? I mean, these things kept coming and kept showing me. And then I got sepsis and was very close to not being here anymore. And that really woke me up.
Right.
I mean, that was that was my big turning point, where it had already started this process. And then that was like my catalyst for immense spiritual growth, because at that point I was like, all right, enough, Laura Mazzotta. Like, time to listen to the call, you know, like, come on here, lady. So that's when I really started with Reiki. I started with Reiki to help with healing the physical body, became a Reiki master teacher, and kept getting introduced to the Akashic Records. They kept knocking on my door. And that's when I felt like I could breathe, and I felt like I could see myself and feel all of myself in a way that I never had before.
I love that. I love that. And that's something that I was just talking about in the last episode I was speaking about, just how, you know, the experience of infusing spiritual work, spirituality within one's life, how it just like completely bursts your life open.
Entirely.
In a way that like is like indescribable, right? It's like you're seeing in like 12D or something. You know what I mean? It's the most unbelievable experience that I just feel so immensely grateful to have had, you know, experience. And I feel sad, you know, that some people never have, right? But I love that point that you're bringing up. And I also think it's really interesting that you brought up Reiki, because I see that time and time again, all the time. I actually think it's one of the most common ways I find it's either someone's a Reiki practitioner or they're a massage therapist. I see that all the time.
It's like a gateway drug.
It is. Right.
to the rest of the spiritual realm.
It totally is. It is. And, you know, and obviously, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, because if you think about it, when you're doing massage, when you're doing Reiki, you're quiet. And it forces you, and it puts you in this space that, I mean, if you think about it, when else would you really be doing that? Right?
Yeah. And I also feel that the game changer for me with Reiki, I had never felt that level of deep, immersive, palpable, divine, compassionate love in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like through my entire body.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's, again, I love that you're bringing that up too, because that's another thing that just came up recently, just around how when we unlock the connection to the spirit world, the level of unconditional love that you feel is unlike anything I could ever explain. There's no words for it.
Nope.
It is mind-blowing to me. And it gives me goosebumps even talking about it, because it's just, oh my God. I mean, there's no way, because as in our human form, there's no way for us to even fully begin to comprehend what that fully feels like when you're not in a human body anymore. But you get a taste of that, and it's like, whoa.
And then it just keeps growing.
Right.
It just keeps growing. And it's like, it brings me to tears. In the past handful of months, the number of times that I have cried just because of the enormity of expansive love that just keeps entering my body, and I'm like dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And no, there's no words for it. The only thing is experience and sensation, right? That can replicate or even bring forward what you feel like, and how you experience it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I feel emotional even just like talking about
Me
it,
too.
honestly. Because, I mean, before we even started recording this, me and Laura were just talking about, I'm coming close to the 1-year anniversary of my dad's passing. So that's bringing up a lot of things. And we also have a full moon in 2 days. Hello.
Mm-hmm.
And your dad's passing, the anniversary is on Sunday.
Yep.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just talking to my little sister this morning about how I've just been, I mean, obviously I have feels and reverence each year, but the last few years have been fine. Like, they've been fine, especially the last 5 years. They've been okay, you know?
Right.
Fine. But this year, holy crap.
Yeah, and you know what? I almost get this feeling too, around where, and let me know what you think of this, that in a way, I actually just feel like for you, part of why that's all feeling that way is because you've opened your expansion and your ability to feel this energy at a deeper layer than you ever have.
100%. My awareness is way expanded.
Right.
I mean, just in the past a few months alone, my consciousness has like exponentially skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And I've been receiving and opening and following through with very large invitations from spirit that feel daunting and twitchy. And I'm like, let's go.
Right. Same.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm like, all right. Yeah. But I think that's so true where even just within, I mean, it hasn't even been a full year for me, but just in some of the deep spiritual practices that I've had where I've connected to my dad, I mean, I've just blown my mind.
Yep.
Blown my mind with what I was feeling. And that's a whole other episode that I'll probably have to do at one point. But okay, so one of the things that I would love to talk about too is kind of explain to me, so as you were going through all of this within your spiritual development and everything, how soon would you say you started to maybe connect with your dad's spirit in a more conscious way or a direct way, if that makes sense?
I feel like that happened pretty quickly.
Okay, yeah.
Connecting with his spirit happened very quickly. And I think that my journey with that was also very rapid, to be honest, of separating, and I think this is so important for people to know, separating my connection with him in spirit from what he embodied in human form.
Big time.
Because I think that when I first connected to his spirit, it was interlaced with who he was and how he presented when he was here in his human body. And that felt, like I said earlier, it was like a bridge. I felt connected. And I think some of that was my mind wanting to have this tether and this memory to hold on to with him. But what I realized very quickly is that he's completely different in raw soul form, spiritual form, than incarnated into a body. And so it was beautiful because it was this opening of, oh, wow, this is so freaking cool. I get to know him. I get to know him in a completely different way. We get to refresh and start our relationship like we're like beginner's mind.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, oh my gosh, like I get to know you from a totally different anchor point of your essence.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's so true. And the other thing, I mean, just as a medium, that's something that I try really hard, you know, to make clear to my clients when I bring things through. And I have so many beautiful experiences in bringing through different people's loved ones where maybe it wasn't such a great relationship, right? Or there was, complexities there. And it's so true. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard this where, right, like you get to have a clean slate in a sense. And not only that, what's so beautiful about it is just like what you were saying, the humanness is no longer there. It's no longer the barrier between you.
And it becomes almost entirely irrelevant.
Right.
Which is fascinating because of course there was trauma with my dad. Of course there were experiences with him that colored our human connection. But I don't care about any of them anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because a couple of them have kind of come up in this past week which is interesting. I mean, it's just a sign that grief is moving through in a different way, right? Which is fine, whatever. But I'm not assigning meaning to it because it's like, who cares? Like none of those experiences have any weight with the soul-to-soul connection of him and I. And of course, as we get older, they always say, like, as you get older, you understand your parents' perspective better, blah, 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 blah. That's not even it. I think it's more that as I connect to him soul to soul, experiences are handed to me by spirit in my life that allow me to understand similar experiences he was in.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, Dad, I get it.
Yeah.
Dad, I get it. I see exactly what your soul was doing there. And it might have felt wrong. It might have felt something that I would judge in human form at that time when I was younger, whatever. But I'm like, this makes complete sense based on your soul's journey.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And that's the other thing I was just thinking about too, is how I can't even tell you how many, there's at least a handful of people that I have in spirit where I maybe had barely any relationship with them. And it wasn't until they passed away that, whoa, like all of a sudden I have like a best friend, you know, and have the most meaningful, life-altering relationships. I mean, I can even say that with one friend of mine in particular that passed. You know, my relationship with her was meaningful, but it was brief. But after she passed away, I mean, I can't even tell you what it did to me. I mean, it was mind-blowing, and that's also a whole other episode. But it's incredible, and it's something that I try to really, like I said already, just help my clients see. Because unfortunately, we do get caught up in the human stuff. And I think, you know, yes, of course, we do need to go through that process and understand that maybe there's anger or things that we need to resolve. But when you feel ready, I really, really encourage you to look beyond that, because there is so much power and healing and magic. I mean, there's no words to explain what it can open for you.
That's exactly it. The word open, because it's about recognizing what's possible, that everything is possible in the spirit world, and that it's not just getting to know this person, but it's the possibilities that your spiritual connection to them opens up for you in this lifetime.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like when I think it was our retreat last year that we ran, that you did a meditation on past loved ones. And I think one of the questions you asked, unless my mind just freaking went there on its own, was around like, what do they do?
Yeah.
Like, what is their job, or what do they do? And I was shocked. And I think you saw a look of shock on my face when I was in that meditation, because what came forward, my dad was like, I work in a library in the sky. I'm getting chills. He's like, I work in a library in the sky. And I was like, okay. And I just kind of watched it and witnessed it. And he, getting choked up. He's like, I work in the Akashic Records, and I'm the one who invited you to do this work with me and on my behalf so that we could bring this. And I was just like, oh my God. And I had been in the Akashic Records for years at this point, and never knew, but clearly this was an invitation that was opened because of him. And I'm so grateful that my awareness was open enough to receive that invitation.
Yeah.
And to allow myself to let go of some of these grips that we have in human life, and just breathe and say, okay, take me, guide me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I have chills all over my body too, talking about it, because I literally, what's crazy that you said that. So the female friend that I was talking about just before this, so literally one of the same things happened to me. Right when she passed, that was right when I opened up to mediumship, and she was one of the main people that was coming in and showing that to me. And I had gone to a medium not long after that, and he said, oh, she's one of the people that signed you up for this. So I just think I just thought of that when you mentioned, I know, it gives me chills. It's like, I wonder how many times does this happen, right? Where somebody passes and then that's the other thing. Oh, and that's what I wanted to point out too. One of the things that has been amazing for me too is when people pass, how they see you.
Oh, yeah.
How that changes, and how amazing that is, where they're like, whoa, look at this. Look at what you are. Look at all the beautiful, amazing, all the power. I mean, I get emotional because, that was some experiences I was having with my dad when I would hear him connect with me, and it would make me so emotional. But I can't even imagine. I love thinking of that, of what that must be like for them. You know, to have this lifelong relationship with someone, and then to see them from the spirit side.
Oh,
yeah.
That just brings me to tears, to be honest, because it's just like, to feel the level of faith that he has in me is invaluable.
Yeah, I feel the same way too with my dad. I know. It's amazing, right? And I also just think how incredible, and I just wonder, How many times I wonder that happens where somebody passes, they see you, and perhaps, right, they see who you work with in the spirit world, or they see what you do, and then they're part of, oh, we're going to invite you into this. We can see what you can do, and here you go. This is why we're here, right? Yeah. I just think that's fascinating.
Yeah, because it's all down here, it's all perception.
Right.
Everything is perception.
Right.
Everything. And when that's gone, it's just purity.
Yeah.
And we get, and to receive that reflection when we are seen in our purest, rawest form is the most deeply anchoring, sustaining, loving, expansive, fortifying thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, oh my God, we could talk about this for hours, but this flew by. But really, and I think that's the other thing, because I know we touched on it before, but really to kind of wrap this up and bring this home too, to me is taking this idea and this concept, right? And just seeing how maybe you can infuse this in your relationships right now with the people that are earth side and also in spirit, right? But just trying to, or not even trying, right? But allowing yourself to see into the people around you at maybe a different level. Just thinking about that.
And to even call it forward.
Right.
By just being in space with them and just witnessing them with more like reverent observation.
Yeah.
Rather than in exchange with just what's on the surface and they're human. And just kind of literally not saying a word, just being in presence and allowing your intention and your love and your openness and receptivity to almost draw that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And so to close, I would just love your opinion, or just to ask you, for our listeners, maybe any advice or anything you'd kind of like to tell them around anyone that's suffering from grief right now with maybe a difficult relationship, and just some guidance as far as how they can start to maybe come into this space of deeper connection and seeing it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that when we're talking about grief, it's obviously honoring whatever space you're in, giving it space, but also it's not just giving space for your own emotions. It's also coming into intentional connection with spirit, with the spirit that you're grieving, and inviting them in and being patient, right? Being patient and knowing that they're absolutely there. Whether you have tangible evidence or not, they're absolutely there, and offering yourself more of a softening within the body, within the breath, within your mind. Going into nature is a great way to do this, right?
Yeah.
And just offering that clarity so that you're just in a more receptive space, because that's the piece. We can try all we want to move into connection and all of this, but at the end of the day, spirit is going to come to us very naturally when we really soften and allow and open. And so that is, go get a massage, like a myofascial release, to like really relax the body, open up with the breath, relax into meditation if you need to, go into nature, but just receive in any way you can, because it's just going to open you to receiving even more. And then that's going to sharpen your awareness and your discernment going forward.
I love that. Yeah. And I love the point that you brought up too around no forcing. There's no need to force. And again, this is natural.
Yes.
It is so natural, right? It's soul to soul. It's totally natural. So to keep that in mind. And again, we could talk forever, but you'll be back. You'll be back for more episodes, and we'll talk about many other things. But thank you guys for listening. And I will put all of Laura's links in the description so that, you can connect with her. She's amazing and wonderful. And again, feel free to message either of us about anything that maybe was sparked in this conversation. We'd love to hear from you. And I will talk to you really soon, everybody. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.